Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now, like most of the world, I've been watching the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial beginning to end. And as I watched, it wasn't too long before I recognised the clear signs of narcissistic abuse at play. And as I watched the verdict, I felt it set a precedent for men and women going through this kind of abuse on a very public stage. Now, I wanted to go over a few points that really stood out to me, and I think they might have hit home for victims of narcissistic abuse and domestic abuse, and the world really. Now, firstly, I have to say a huge thanks to Johnny Depp for insisting that this trial be made public. Now, I know he had a good reason for doing so, and it was so that we could see who his abuser really was behind the mask. Now, I'm based in London, where his previous trial against the Sun newspaper was. And after witnessing this current case, it's no wonder that he lost that one, because it all was done behind closed doors, basically. And apparently there was foul play to begin with, because the judge's son worked for Murdoch, who owns the Sun newspaper. Now, I believe that Amber's testimony played a big part in the outcome, because she's the one who put the word out there about Johnny being an abuser in the first place. And because of the nature of the trial and the laws governing the UK law system, there's only so much evidence he could give regarding Amber specifically. Now, I'm not going to go into the London trial and outcome, because that's a whole other video. All I'll say is that the jury were blinded by Amber's input, and the judge was prejudiced from the very start. So in this trial, in Johnny's first testimonies, if you notice, he gave an account of growing up with an abusive mother. He testified that she was mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive. He talked about how his father was abused by his mother and never retaliated. He basically married, I think, a copy of his mum. And he became like his dad, which is kind of similar in cases with a lot of survivors of narcissistic abuse. It becomes sort of like a rinse and repeat cycle, if not healed at the core. And I think that was the most important part of Johnny's testimony, because it exposed his vulnerabilities, and Amber Heard, knowing this, exploited them, using them to her advantage. He talked about using drugs and alcohol to pacify himself and temporarily escape the pain. So it's clear from that Johnny repeated the cycle of abuse, because he hasn't yet healed from the wounds caused by his mother's abuse. And I think both him and Amber are wounded, but in different ways. What was interesting, though, is that Johnny said because of the abuse he suffered, he knew how to raise children in the opposite way he was raised. But at the same time, that subconscious programming was still at play, because although he couldn't and chose not to abuse anyone, he could accept it. And this is a clear example of why healing from past abuse is so vital. So if we do come across a character like Amber, our boundaries do not allow them to cross. Now, I've seen this kind of abuse with my own eyes. And when I say that, I mean a woman abusing a man, that being my father. So my mother was a beautiful woman, and many literally just took her at face value. But I saw how my mother was able to fool people into believing she was naive and almost meek. Behind closed doors, I saw my dad being physically abused, literally like stories like boiling water poured in his ears while he slept, locked in rooms, verbally and emotionally mocked, and finally discarded. Now, if he had spoken out, he would have been labelled shameful, weak, because men don't do that, do they? Especially a surgeon who's considered a high-value man. Now, abused men have been conditioned to suck it up, be quiet, and just take it without saying a word. And the women who abuse men use that to their advantage. But my hope is this verdict has changed things even a little. Now, whilst we were watching the trial, my daughter said, referring to Amber, "Oh, she doesn't look like an abuser. She looks nice. Why is she like this?" And my response was, what does an abuser look like? Now, I'm glad it was Amber in a way that's the face of what an abuser could look like, proving looks can absolutely be deceiving. Now, if we ignore the outer look, an abuser actually looks like what their internal landscape is. Now, if someone were blind, for instance, and experienced Amber the way Johnny did, they wouldn't call her beautiful, that's for sure. I think Camille Vasquez, which was Johnny's attorney, did at the end what was genius. She recognized that Amber is a narcissist and therefore has a very fragile ego. So what did she do? She attacked her ego by saying Johnny got her the role in Aquaman, which obviously hit a nerve if you watched. She named all the supporters and people who loved Johnny enough to show up for him across the world, but only her sister showed up for her. She painted the real picture of Johnny being the victim of her abuse. She confronted her with cold, hard facts and the truth with undeniable evidence. And she strategically unmasked her on the stand. She put Johnny on a pedestal, and I think that hurt her because her motive is to knock him off the pedestal that the world has put him on. I mean, based on his character, his nice character, and to make him look like an absolute monster. And she was so triggered and so busy defending her lies, she ended up unintentionally confessing to writing the op-ed about Johnny because he is a powerful man with many supporters, apparently. That's what she said. So she wanted to bring him down a notch or three and tarnish his reputation in the eyes of the world. And whilst I was watching the whole thing, I just thought to myself, you know, the world is actually witnessing a man being emotionally abused live in action and actually re-traumatized. Now, I know what it's like to sit there and your abuser tells someone else or people right in your presence that you did or said things you didn't. The nerve. But they don't have a nerve, do they? They don't have a conscience. They see the end goal to destroy you and everything else is just a blur. Now, Amber Heard did that on a very public stage, and I commend Johnny Depp for composing himself as hard as you can clearly see it was for him. We witnessed Amber's attempts to manipulate and emotionally abuse the jury also. All those answers, turning her head and woe me looks directed at the jury, screamed, "You have to believe me. I'm so vulnerable. I'm the victim here. Everyone else is lying but me." I mean, I actually felt sorry for the jury. But what she failed to realise is that every human being can pick up on being manipulated in such a way. Even my kids weren't fooled. So how much more the jury? Unbelievable. Actually, it is believable to her, considering her character. If someone wants to know what narcissistic abuse really looks like, they just need to watch their trial. Listen to the tapes. Watch her lack of emotional illiteracy. No tears, no empathy, no feeling, nothing. I have to also say that we can see that their whole relationship was toxic on both sides. Johnny admitted to the part that he played, though. He admitted his mistakes and where he falls short. He showed that he's only human. But the thing is, Amber didn't. Narcissists live in their own little world. Amber believed her lies and she thought she could gaslight the whole world into believing them too. She turned the story of accounts around, and it's likely that most of what she described was actually what she did and said to Johnny, with added embellishments for extra effect. She purposely provoked him, then whipped out her phone and recorded him being reactive to her provocation, but conveniently left out what led to those responses. So that was Johnny reacting to the abuse, basically. And even in the video she released with him smashing cupboards, you can clearly hear him talking about something that didn't happen to her, but obviously happened to him, that he was obviously responding to. Now, Amber Heard wanted the admiration, like all narcissists do, of becoming the face of a domestic abuse survivor, knowing full well that the true survivor was Johnny Depp. She would have happily lived her life with his 100 million, leaving him labelled for life as a very violent domestic abuser. So that's a lens that a lot of narcissists will go to. By the time you've foiled their motives and plans, their smear campaign is well underway and they have no plans to let up. I think Johnny made the right choice not to look Amber in the eye during the trial, because imagine the supply she would have got. Imagine the validation. I mean, I won't mention her, I use the term very loosely here, her acting. We all saw that, so I'll just leave that there. So Amber exhibited all the traits and cycles of narcissistic abuse. love bombing, devaluing, breadcrumbing, discarding, gaslighting, projection, baiting, scapegoating, mirroring, invalidation, word salads, future faking, false self, inconsistent stories, hoovering, triangulation, flying monkeys, smear campaigns, and narcissistic rage. She has become the poster girl of a narcissistic and domestic abuser, and I think that it has an even greater effect because she is a woman. The jury basically ruled that Amber purposely, maliciously tortured Johnny for years, and she is now probably reeling in narcissistic rage because for her, this is the worst outcome: to be publicly unmasked and to witness your victim win, not just in the judicial court, but in the court of public opinion. And worst of all, to be rejected by the world. In her statement, Amber said the outcome is a setback for real victims of domestic violence, specifically women, which is an oxymoron because firstly, it's been proven that she, in fact, was the abuser. So what is that saying for real victims? Well, I think it's saying that despite their gender, man or woman, they will be seen, they will be heard, and they can be believed. So I just feel that she's so wrapped up in her own little world that she failed to understand that people recognize real and genuine when they see it. And ironically, she provided all the evidence to prove just how malicious and dangerous a narcissist can be when they're determined to ruin your life. And I sincerely hope that she seeks the help that she needs to recover from her own deep inner wounds. Now, in Johnny's statement, he said, I quote him, "I hope that my quest to have the truth be told will help others, men and women, who have found themselves in my situation." I truly believe that this trial has set a precedent for, I have to say, men especially in this moment, but also every survivor of narcissistic and domestic abuse. Johnny deserved to be set free from the mental and emotional prison he was put in for years by his abuser. He refused to stand down, fought a good fight, and he's helped more victims than he could ever know because now they have a very public point of reference when people don't believe or understand what they're going through. And as Johnny said at the end of his statement, truth never perishes. So thanks for listening, guys, and I'll speak to you on the next video. Take care.